In this fourth Megazeux tutorial, we're going to cover how to change some of the settings in the config file. This will help you get a more optimized experience from Megazeux. And this is just a plain text file. When you open it, you can just see that it's just plain text. What Megazeux actually does is basically reads this file and sets up any of the parameters that you tell it to. And how you do that is you're going to want to read through this file. Any of these pound signs that you remove will be read by the Megazeux file when it starts. So a lot of this is just comments that are for your information, and then what follows below the comment is the actual setting you would want to change, and whatever's after the equals is what you would actually tell it to change. And a lot of these are just 1 and 0. 1 would be on and 0 would be off. So if you uncheck this line here, that means that it would use this setting here, and it would do whatever it explains up here that it does. I'm going to go through a few that'll help you. First of all, get a full screen view out of the game. The first area of this is called video options. So by default, the video output is software, but if you want to try and go to a different mode, you could try any of these others out. Video output, overlay 1 and overlay 2. And like I said, you can read about it up here, what they do. I use video output GLSL, and that works pretty well for my computer. So we'll go ahead and try that, and I'll show you what it looks like. And then the default setting is linear. I'm going to change this GL filter method to nearest. I don't fully understand exactly what it does, but it seems to have less blur, I guess, is what the text up here says. So that's always good. I'm going to make the window resolution. So if it was to be put into Windows mode, and I'm going to start it out in full screen mode, but you can always switch to windowed mode with Control-Alt-Enter. You can switch back and forth that way. I'm going to make it 640 by 480, which is Megazeux' default or standard pixel density. I'm going to enable resizing of the window, and I'm going to start the game in full screen mode. I'm going to leave the audio options alone because it sounds pretty good in my opinion. I don't think I need to change any of those. Down here in game options, we have this option here is to start up in the editor mode, so it would automatically go into editing a game when you begin Megazeux, rather than having to load a game. Or you'd still have to load a game, but you'd be in the editor. And you can actually specify a path for Megazeux to run, and a startup file to start up with. And I wonder, let me try and see if I can get it to start up with caverns automatically. So the folder that I put into Megazeux, that I put the games in, was called Game, and then the startup, and then I put it in a subdirectory of caverns. So that should take us to where the startup file we want to start with is located, and the startup file is called caverns. So if I uncomment these two lines here, it should start at caverns. We'll find out. Next we have editor options. Now you probably won't want to change these in the beginning because if you're new to Megazeux, you won't even really know what they do. So you'll want to play with the game for a while before you change these settings. I've been using Megazeux for a long time, so I'm going to change a few to fit my tastes. One is the editor spacebar toggles characters on and off. So in other words, when I hit the spacebar, I can place a block and press it again to remove it, and that includes robots. By default now, the spacebar only places blocks, it does not remove them. I think you use delete to remove them. And I don't think you can, you can only overwrite robots by hitting the delete key. You can't place a block over a robot to overwrite it anymore. And Megazeux used to be set up differently, so I'm going to put it how I'm used to. Another option that I change is board editor hide help. Now this is the pane along the bottom of the screen that shows all of the help stuff, and this is very helpful to beginners because it's very hard to remember what all of those commands are in the beginning, what all those keys do. But I know what I'm doing, so I can go ahead and hide that for now. And you can show it again when you're in the game by pressing Alt-H. So you can press Alt-H to bring it up and make it disappear. And it just shows you a little bit more of the game board, so it's nice to have that out of the way. Okay, next we have, let's see, I'm not going to change any of the robot editor options for now. I think the next one I want is disabling backups. And I would actually recommend that you keep backups on unless you get into a good habit of saving fairly frequently. Megazeux is pretty stable. It doesn't crash very often, but it still can happen. And you don't want to lose a ton of work by not having a backup or not having saved recently. But since I am very in the habit of saving almost after everything I do that's significant or pretty frequently, I probably save once every few minutes. I would keep the backup on. Having backups on causes a slight delay, maybe a 1-second pause every time it saves, and I find that annoying, and that's why I disable backups. And the way to disable backups is to put the count to 0. So that will no longer make any backups for me. And the last thing we'll go over is joystick options, and I'm actually going to have to go into Megazeux to show you how to find what number you need for the buttons of the joysticks. So there's a small program we have to write in robotic that displays a number when you press a button on the keyboard, and that's how you figure out what key you need to map to what joystick button. It's fairly easy, I'll show you, but first we will save this config text file and run Megazeux.